Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Anglo-Asian Mining PLC investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged. They can be submitted at any time via the Q&A tab that's just situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Please just simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it's appropriate to do so, and these will be available via your Investor Meet company dashboard. Before we begin, if I may, I would like to submit the following poll, and if you could give that your kind attention, I'm sure the company would be most grateful. And I'd now like to hand you over to CEO Reza Vaziri. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning from wherever I am. And I would like to, first of all, welcome all of you to our presentation. Today, we are so excited to present to you our growth strategy that will transition Anglo-Asian mining to multi-asset and mid-tier gold, copper, silver, and zinc producer. Next slide, please. Anglo-Asian Mining was floated in the London Stock Exchange in 2005, and immediately after raising the money market, in less than 4 years, we built our first mine in Gedebek area, and since then we are producing gold, copper, and silver consistently. The company has a strong track record of building and operating efficiently in Azerbaijan for all our domestic and international shareholders. Anglo-Asian assets are located in Azerbaijan with traditional focus on gold production, as well as silver, copper, and zinc. In last 2 years, we have gradually shifted our focus towards copper. Today's strategy culminates our transition to copper-focused mid-tier production profile miner. We have a strong history of meeting production guidance, debt-free, and cash positive. Next slide, please. As I mentioned before, Anglo-Asian has a great track record of operating mines for over 15 years. Myself and my family are the biggest shareholder of the company, with the board and management holding about 45% of the whole share of this company. This means that our interests are aligned with those of you or those of the shareholders that we have in the company. Growth strategy underpins a continued commitment to deliver attractive returns to the shareholder. Next slide, please. New strategic plan for growth to transition to multi-asset, mid-tier copper and gold producer by 2028, with near-term production forecasted to increase 30 to 50%. Our current operations are currently performing in line with expectation, and recent exploration success indicate quality future asset that can and will be added to our portfolio. Today's growth strategy presents an important step towards our future development and increase our level of market disclosure. Next, please. We have a strong track record. We have a strong track record of paying dividends so far.
Steve, please take over.
We have a strong track record of paying high dividends. So far, we have paid more than 41 million to our shareholder, illustrating our commitment to delivering attractive shareholder return. Next slide, please. In summary,
May we just go back to the previous slide? Thank you. Becoming a premier mid-tier copper gold producer and developer. How are we actually going to achieve this? Essentially, we've got 3 steps that we'll be following to do that. We need to enhance and extend our current operations in northwest Azerbaijan, where we operate the mines at Gedebek and Gadir. And then we need to increase our production growth through the construction of new mines. The first mines to come on stream will be those of Zafer and Gilar, both of which are underground mining operations, with Zafer being dominantly copper, plus some gold and zinc, and Gilar being gold and copper, of which has significant grades, if I may refer the audience to previous RNS in relation to Gilar. Following that, really, it's the big copper projects that start to come into play. And the first of those two projects that we'd be looking to develop is the Kha project, followed by Garadag. So the first phase is essentially the transition from where we are today, extending that mine life and beginning that growth period. That's the transition. But when we bring in the Garadag property, which is the significant asset that hosts over 300,000 tons of copper in situ in the ground, that's transformational for the company. And then beyond that, we also have external investments and future development that I'll discuss a bit later. But importantly, as we follow that timeline, we have a 3-year objective to become a 100,000 ounce gold equivalent per annum producer. Next slide, please. Focusing on Azerbaijan, the company has 8 contract areas or license areas with a land coverage of over 2,500 square kilometers. Essentially, the contract areas can be divided into 3 zones or sections, if you like. We have the northern block comprising Gedebek, Garadag, Kha, and Gosha that I'll be discussing in the next slide. And we have as well, in the central part of Western Azerbaijan, we have the Demirli and Gizilbulak contract areas. And to the south, we have Ordubad contract area and Vejnali. These projects will be discussed a bit later when I talk about the future pipeline beyond the immediate production plans. Next slide, please. Focusing on to that northern block, where I referenced in the previous slide, Gedebek, Garadag, Kha, and Gosha. Those 4 contract areas are all in juxtaposition together, forming one large contiguous area of over 1,400 square kilometers. The image on the left is showing such contract areas, and outlined in the white is the contract area of Gedebek. The blue icons basically showing where we are currently operating from. That's the Gedebek mine and Gadir mine, where we produce gold, doré, copper concentrate. The development projects in the short term are those of Zafer and Gilar, also shown in the Gedebek contract area. To the north of that are the 2 properties of Kha and Garadag, which form part of the recent acquisition by the company to acquire those projects in last year. We actually only received all of the data last September, and since then we've been aggressively and working very, very hard on defining the resource potential of Kha and Garadag, and both of those have been subject again to recent RNSs. To look at the potential, if we look at the right-hand side of that particular slide, in the southwest corner, you can see a cluster of copper values representing the Kha deposit, and about 2 kilometers north of that, the Garadag cluster. Garadag itself is in the order of the potential of 3 kilometers by 1.8 kilometers, as represented by the cluster of copper values shown in and around the Garadag area. However, to the northeast of that, you can also see another couple of deposits, which are known collectively as Jayachai, where grades are known to be above 2% copper. And all of those black dots on that trend essentially is where historical data has picked up copper greater than 0.1%, thus indicating that it's a mineralizing system that collectively we have called the Garadag Copper Belt over a 10-kilometer strike length. Next slide, please. The company has a long-term track record of meeting its production guidance and is highly experienced in developing its exploration assets through to production in Azerbaijan. So our production target ranges are shown in this particular chart, with the annual lower target range and higher target range for each year. Importantly, you can see in the transition period, phase 1, between 2023 through to the end of 2025, we're looking at a potential growth of 30 to 50% on our production. Beyond that, in 2026, which is when it's forecast that the Kharkhar property will come on stream, that's the big copper asset, you can see from there through till 2028, when Garadag is scheduled to come on stream, we're looking at in excess or in the order of 150% total production growth. So this is essentially showing the timeline of the production increase through phase 1 transition and phase 2 transformational. Next slide, please. Having actually discussed the potential of all of the production assets going from the current production of in the order of 50 to 55,000 ounces, upward to 75,000 ounces, and then onwards to 175, that being 36,000 tons of copper. We need to think, what is our future beyond that? And the company has developed a robust pipeline to underpin its future growth. With this pipeline, we've essentially split it into 4 subgroups: the construction phase, development phase, future projects, and the longer-term exploration. So we've already briefly discussed the construction phase with Zafer and Gilar. Portal construction and underground tunneling has commenced on these projects, and the intention is to be accessing the mineralization towards the end of this year, early 2024, to bring them into production. And they would then continue to support and supplement the production from Gedebek and Gadir. Importantly, those projects that I've just discussed are all processed at the Gedebek area. The development phase, which include the copper assets of Kharkhar and Garadag, will have separate processing facilities to that of the Gedebek area itself. So the Gedebek area would continue to be able to receive material from Zafer Gilar plus surrounding near mine exploration, while we then start to develop in parallel the Kharkhar and Garadag projects. It's highly likely, given the geographic position of these 2 assets, that they would have a shared processing facility. That would also then allow for efficiencies in land allocation, power management, environmental management, etc. And so the company currently is conducting quite extensive surveys and mineralogy tests to look at processing methods, including flotation, heap leach, bacterial heap leach, and options for open pit or underground mining. Another scenario could actually be in situ leaching that the company is assessing as well. So that effectively then brings us to our 2028 start of production and where we achieve our mid-tier status, having produced or be producing in excess of 30,000 tons of copper per annum. Then we have our future projects. These blocks essentially are description or titles of our other contract areas. At Ordubad in the Nakhchivan region of Azerbaijan, in the south of the country, we have significant copper and gold potential. We've been working there for many years and working closely with international groups studying porphyry copper style mineralization. And I'd just like to confirm that recently we've also started to conduct drilling programs in that area. Vejnali is under a mining study to assess mineral resources, as well as regional exploration to assess the gold and copper potential in that area. Demirli and Kizilbulak, they were the two properties that were located in central west Azerbaijan, referenced in the previous map of Azerbaijan when I was referencing the contract areas. Demirli is adjacent to the Kizilbulak contract area in the Karabakh economic region. And the Demirli contract area contains the already built Demirli copper molybdenum mine and plant. So developing operations at Demirli should have an accelerated timeline once access is granted. And any production from Demirli is currently not included in this current forecast. Additionally, it's known obviously that Kizilbulak and Demirli has significant exploration potential for polymetallic mineralization, more gold properties, and copper molybdenum. The external Azerbaijan investment of the company is that of Mokoa and Esperanza referenced here. Anglo-Asian Mining has invested in a company called Libero Copper, and the company holds 19.8% shareholding in Libero, which is listed on the TSX Venture Fund, Toronto, and owns several copper exploration properties in North and South America, all of which are in stable jurisdictions. This portfolio includes the porphyry copper deposit of Mokoa. Mokoa is one of the world's largest undeveloped copper molybdenum resources located in Colombia, and Esperanza, a porphyry copper gold and epithermal gold project in Argentina. The other projects are porphyry potential and copper gold targets based in British Columbia, Canada. But Mokoa itself contains an inferred mineral resource of over 600 million tons at a grade of 0.33. That's containing over 2 million tons of copper and 230,000 tons of molybdenum. So, currently Anglo-Asian Mining is working very closely with the Libero team. The projects are world-class, and we look forward to looking at options to develop those in the future. In terms of our long-term exploration, we are looking at not just projects within Azerbaijan, but also other future global opportunities. But just to come back to our hub and our home country of Azerbaijan, our long-term exploration is essentially focused on 50 plus regional exploration targets. That's known mineral occurrences and deposits that are located in the company's 8 contract areas in Azerbaijan. So what I'm trying to demonstrate here is that the company has a robust strategic plan for increasing its copper assets to become mid-tier status. But on the back of that, there's significant future growth potential underpinned on our pipeline as well. Next slide, please. This is our production targets by mine contribution. So you can see the contribution of Gedebek, but then the importance of Gilar in the short term, the gold color in the slide, and the progressive increase in gold equivalent ounces. From 2026 onwards, The slide clearly shows the importance then of Khaha coming into production, and then later the startup of operations in 2027 at Garadag and targeting the larger production in 2028. Anglo-Asian Mining has a proven fast-track ability to construct mines and have demonstrated the ability to work the mining value chain from exploration to final metal product. We have all of those components in place within the company to be able to materialize this type of project. Next slide, please. This slide is looking specifically at copper, and we can see the step changes in copper production from 2026 onwards. And as referenced before, it's the Khaha and Garadag properties which give us that sequential jump. This strategy really is copper focused, and you can see that essentially 2028 is when we would achieve that mid-tier status. Next slide, please. This slide really looks at the gold ounce production and the copper tons production and the impact that they have on the projects. The gold ounce production is generally declining or flat in Gedebek, but it's the right-hand side that is key here, looking at the significant increase in copper production going forward and the contribution of those mining operations. So this strategy anticipates that the contribution of copper to the company's revenue will exceed that of gold doré from 2026. So the aim is to move the company to being a significant copper producer while being underpinned by precious metal production. Why is that? Next slide, please. This slide basically gives some background information with regards to the copper the leverage to copper and the electrification scenarios and global impact of essentially going towards net zero. Copper is a critical metal for the energy transition to net zero that is expected to benefit from increased demand as we move towards electrification and the intensification of related projects. As mentioned on the previous slide, copper is expected to become the principal product of the company from 2026. So we see a synergy with global demand of a particular metal with our growth strategy. Next slide, please. This demonstrates some of the examples of where copper really is significant in terms of electrification. On the left-hand side, you can see therefore the copper use by generation type and the significant increase in the tons per megawatt going forward as we move towards the green revolution and net zero. Taking things slightly more closer to home, even electric vehicles. The transition from a combustion vehicle with an average of 23 kilograms of copper per vehicle transitions through to over 82 kilograms per vehicle for battery electric vehicles. That is a huge, huge volume of copper metal that's required going forward. And on the right-hand side, looking at the energy aspects of the green revolution and targeting net zero, you can actually see there that the compound annual growth rate has been suggested to be 16%. So many sectors of industry around the world, copper is a critical metal for this energy transition to net zero. So to summarize the strategy in context of the resource potential, the company has over 1 million tons of attributable copper at various resource categories. And the new strategy for Anglo-Asian mining is to transition to a multi-asset, mid-tier copper and gold producer by 2028, and onward development of its project pipelines to continue to provide benefit to all of the shareholder and stakeholder base surrounding the company. Thank you very much. Next slide, please. Over to you, Reza.
Thank you, Steve. We have a strong track record of paying high dividends. So far, we have paid over $41 million of dividends to our shareholder. This illustrating our commitment to delivering attractive shareholder returns. Next slide, please. In summary, we are incredibly excited by the strategic growth opportunity in front of us. We have a strong track record. We have an experienced team. We have a healthy balance sheet with no debt and healthy cash in the bank, and also cash generative. We now welcome any question that you guys may have. Thank you.
Reza, Stephen, that's great. Thank you very much indeed for your presentation this afternoon. If I may just jump back in there, and what I'll do is I'll just bring back up your cameras there. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions just by using the Q&A tab that's situated on the top right-hand corner of your screen. But just while the team take a few moments to review those questions that were submitted already, I would like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. Reza, Stephen, as you can see there in the Q&A tab, we have received a number of questions throughout your presentation this afternoon. And thank you to all of those on the call for taking the time to submit their questions. But guys, if I may just hand back to you to respond to those questions where it's appropriate to do so, and then I'll pick up from you at the end. Thank you.
Certainly, thank you very much. If I may, Reza, I shall read the questions out, and then we shall decide who best to answer. There's a question here from Jake D. It was a pre-submitted question. Given the extensive plans for development of the new mines in Azerbaijan, do the board consider further investment, should they require it, in Libero Copper to maintain the stakeholding is worthwhile? The question actually references as well a 29% stakeholding, but my understanding is it's actually less than 20. But Reza, would you be able to answer that?
Sure. Libero is extremely important for us. We have reviewed it. We knew that it's a good company with good management. Also, we are strongly believe in Macau, which is one of the largest copper potential in the world. So our interest is gonna be there. It depends on our growth strategy, but still we are extremely interested to keep our position in Libero at the moment.
Okay, thank you. I'm just looking at the next two, and they seem to have a similar theme. From Chris T. How well funded are you to achieve your strategic objectives? And from James C. How will Khaha and Garadag mines and processing facilities be funded? So essentially, the question is about the future funding to achieve our objectives.
As I said, we are cash generative. We have revenue. We have good money in the bank. And also, we have access to the credit in local and international bank. At the time being, we have $32 million of credit facility available for us, which I signed about 2 weeks ago from International Bank of Azerbaijan. And also there are other banks in Azerbaijan that they are extremely interested to work with us. In short, we have money, we have revenue, and also we have access to the credit facility in Azerbaijan and also outside of Azerbaijan.
Okay, thank you. There's a question here from Paul D. On slides 11 and 12, which were the slides relating to production targets by mine contribution, gold equivalent ounces, and copper to become the primary product. The question is as follows. Your forecast indicates production from Gilar tailing off in 2027. Given that recent drilling results appear to be showing the resource at Gilar getting richer and larger at depth, is it possible that Gilar may produce for longer than you are currently anticipating? Shall I take that one, Reza? Sure. I'll do this one. Yeah, sure. Yeah, the recent drilling has actually been quite phenomenal at Gilar, with some significant intersections, 60 plus meters thickness at very, very high gold and copper grades. And essentially this part of the development plan focuses on that lower zone of the high grade material. So yes, Gilar is growing as we're drilling. Gilar is essentially split into an upper level and a lower level. And it's that lower level that we're looking to bring into production first because of the significant grade. But while we're developing and producing that lower level, we'll also be assessing the upper level as well. So we've got opportunities to enhance the production from Gilar, both from the upper level and expansions of the lower level. So to answer your question, Paul, is it possible that Gilar may produce for longer than is currently anticipating? The answer is yes. Okay, thank you for that one. Michael C. Have you gained access to Demirli? And do you know the state of the facilities there? Reza?
Sure. We have not gained the access to Demirli yet. Based on the agreement signed between Azerbaijan, Russia, Armenia, and Turkey, the Russian peacekeeper, they have a commitment to stay there to maintain peace until, I believe, another year and a half. As soon as they leave, they're going to give us the access to Demirli. But with the recent development and discussion which is going on between the countries by mediating the United States and European Union, I believe that agreement comes much sooner than 1.5 years. Therefore, we immediately after that, we're going to get access to huge resource of Demirli.
Okay. I have a question here from Paul D. It has been very rich news flow period from Anglo-Asian. Could you explain what news you anticipate coming in the next 3 to 6 months? Well, so I'll take that one. Okay. Apart from the obvious regulatory information that's required, the annual report, etc., the company will be continuing to update the market and its shareholders on the development of the underground mining assets of Gilar and Zafer, progress updates on both Khaha and Garadag. So we're anticipating that news flow would continue. We'd be providing an update status of the Gedebek block, and as results or news is developed from all of the other contract areas that we're working on, they would be reported on accordingly. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, question from John C. Okay, this one is quite a long one. I'm trying to understand how the Gilar ore is going to be treated. The Gilar ore is rich in both copper and gold. Historically, the agitation leach plant is good at recovering gold, but it is expensive to run with ore that also has a lot of copper. Our flotation plant is good at recovering copper, but poor at recovering gold. Will Gilar ore, Will Gilar ore therefore be treated sequentially by the flotation plant and then the agitation leach plant to ensure we recover the maximum amount of gold and copper? We ran this configuration a few years ago. Can this configuration manage to treat 1.3 million tons per year? Okay, this is actually a very good question, because when copper ores are processed through the agitation leach, depending on the mineralization style, that copper mineralization can consume the chemicals being used in that process. So we do have the ability of putting the agitation leach and the flotation plant either in parallel or series, with the ability of either processing agitation leach first and then the tails of that product going through flotation, or the other way around, float off the copper concentrate first and the tails of that going through the agitation leach. It essentially comes down to the financial analysis. Which method is actually going to give us more shareholder benefit, one way or another? And so the mineralogy is actually very important, because not all copper metals actually consume certain chemicals in the process. So given the high grade of gold, it's anticipated at the moment that it's likely to go through the agitation leach plant first, and then the tails of that going through to copper concentrate, because we would get a higher revenue from the copper doré product than a gold contribution into any copper concentrate that would be produced through flotation. So it's a bit complex. I can't actually say hand on heart, this is what we're going to do, but I tried to explain the scenario, and obviously the test work will give us the best answer in terms of which one would provide the better revenue stream. Thank you. Okay, question from Dave X. Will the dividend be safe in the short term?
The short answer is yes. Our aim is to maintain our dividend policy, and we have no intention to reduce it or cut it.
Okay. Question here from Ian M. In 18 years, AAZ has never gone back to the market to raise more capital. Hopefully that will remain the case.
This is one of our advantages, that we never let any shareholder to be diluted. If the fund was necessary, the main shareholder come up with it, and they never let anybody to be diluted. Hopefully, we're gonna keep that policy for the future as well. As I said, we have revenue, we have cash in the bank, and we have access to the credit facilities in Azerbaijan and out of Azerbaijan. Therefore, I don't see any need to cut the dividend or reduce the amount of the dividend at the moment.
Okay, a question from Thomas D. Has the share buyback now been definitively abandoned, or is it ongoing?
At the time being, we are not buying any share because we have a growth strategy in front of us. Our focus is our growth strategy, and I don't believe at the moment we're gonna buy back any shares until further notice.
Okay, thank you, Reza. Okay, question here from Grant B. You have been operating in Azerbaijan for a long time. Given that you are growing production in the country, how is it working with the local government agencies with regards to permitting and development?
So far, we had a great experience with the government of Azerbaijan. They cooperated with us in any problem that so far we had in Azerbaijan. We have excellent relation with our partners, Ministry of Ecology and Natural Resources. We have fantastic relation with the Ministry of Economy and rest of the involved ministries in our work. That relation, I believe, it's going to be continued, and I don't see any reason to be otherwise.
Okay, thank you. A question here from Chris L. Given the poorer cash flows initially, prior to the new mines contributing, is it likely to be feasible to maintain a dividend in 2023? And part B of that question, also any news on Vejnali? So dividend 2023, part A, and part B, any news on Vejnali?
Go ahead, Steve. In dividend part, I can say we're going to maintain our dividend policy for 2023, and we're going to pay dividend we paid last year and the year before. In about Vejnali, Steve can explain it, but at the time being, exploration is also going on, and development simultaneous with exploration is being conducted in Vejnali property.
Yes.
You want to add anything, Steve?
Sure. To supplement that last statement about Vejnali, the company is trying to assess the volumes of material previously mined under previous occupation. However, Anglo-Asian is also developing at the Vejnali mine itself to try to assess the mineral potential deeper on the vein system. That's at the mine itself. But Vejnali is a contract area, and that contract area hosts a lot of other targets. And recently we've commissioned a satellite survey by Worldview 3 using a company called Exploration Mapping to assist with identification of mineral alteration zones for target identifications. So as much as Vejnali at the moment appears to be on a back burner, the company is actively working on both the mine and the contract area. Thank you. Okay, question from James C, also about Vejnali. Please could you explain why Vejnali is somewhat deprioritized in this plan? My understanding is that until recently this was fully operating mine that if reactivated could generate cash flows in the short term to provide the financing to pursue development opportunities. Shall I take this one, Reza?
Go ahead, answer it.
Okay, and partially this question was answered in the previous answer to the question relating to Vejnali. Parts of the mine were inaccessible, which have now been made accessible. And a significant amount of mineralization from our understanding of the resources as previously published underneath the Soviet era exploration periods. We don't have any recent resource statements. There's been quite a bit of extensive mining. Exactly how much, we're still accessing different areas underground to try to make that reconciliation. Yes, some of the sidewall grades are very, very high. And if we can actually demonstrate that that vein system continues deeper, or indeed there are parallel vein systems to the current mine, then for sure it could generate further revenue for the company. But it's a small operation, so it's a small tonnage, high-grade gold. So really, the way we're looking at Vejnali, and Gosha to some extent is similar, is that they would be contributor mines to the overall production and not company making operations such as Khachar and Garadag. So that's why, to some extent as well, They're visually being put on the back burner, partially because of we're unable at the moment to commit to a tonnage and a grade because of the situation of the physical state of the mine underground and trying to assess what's already been mined. So yes, they're there, but from the point of view of contribution to the production schedule, they've been left out. But should we find particular zones that we could mine quickly, then for sure, they would absolutely contribute to cash flow going forward.
I would like to add something to what just Steve said. Also, don't forget that as a result of the war, the processing facility, camp, and everything was almost destroyed. So we start building from scratch. Now we have the laboratory, we have the camp for the workers to stay there, and we have also overhauling the processing facility. So it is in the plan, but as Steve said, it's not the priority.
Okay, thank you, Reza. I have another question from Paul D. What are realistic plans for Ordubad? When the company was originally floated, it was the focus of development, but events perhaps got in the way. Is access to Ordubad straightforward now? It looks a huge resource, but what needs to happen before you can start to plan or start planning to develop it?
Go ahead, Steve.
Absolutely, you're correct. When the company was floated, Ordubad was very much the focus of the potential of the group at the time. Soviet resource statements are really quite significant in terms of copper and gold potential. Some of those have not materialized, some have. And we need to further evaluate Ordubad geology to understand the larger scale potential. Now, before the company looked at smaller deposits such as Piazbashi and Agyurt, which are vein gold systems, as discrete small-scale operations that, given the topography and the geography, would be quite difficult to construct and process economically as standalone projects. That's where we were looking at bringing them together. But we've also identified significant alteration zones in that area, and much of it is actually copper-related alteration styles of mineralization. And in and around the Ordubad area, there are a number of known porphyry copper mines in adjacent countries, and so that area is high potential for copper style mineralization. Access now to Ordubad is fairly straightforward. Currently, it's a flight from the main part of Azerbaijan into Nakhchivan. However, we still have access by road through adjacent countries for moving drill rigs, equipment, etc. And we've recently actually carried out that exercise, and we're currently drilling at Ordubad, having identified targets for potential copper alteration systems. So we've been working quite closely with the Natural History Museum of London, who have a specialist department looking at geochemistry and porphyry potential. And so working closely with them, we've identified a number of drill targets. And so really, this is the first stage of rekindling activity in the area. So thank you. Yeah. Any comments, Reza, about Ordubad?
Absolutely. And also for your information, I met with the governor of Ordubad about a month ago, new governor of the Ordubad, and he was extremely supportive, and he asked us to accelerate basically the activity in Ordubad, which we are doing it right now.
Okay, thank you for that. A question from Thomas D. Might the company one day consider taking over Libero, or will you simply remain a minority shareholder?
At the time being, our focus is our own growth strategy. But it might happen in the future. But as I said, our main focus at the time being is our growth strategy in Azerbaijan.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's correct. But I would like to say, as I mentioned earlier on as well, Libero Copper have some significant projects. We have a significant shareholding in the company, and technically, their operations team and our operations team do work closely together. So we don't see ourselves as being competitors in the market. We're working together, and at an appropriate time, should the projects deem that it's sensible for the parties to get together or a transaction be agreed, it would be by mutual agreement. So at the moment, we would simply remain a minority shareholder until such time further discussions are brought forward. A question here from Aaron B, and actually I think it's the last question of the Q&A session. Seeing as the company has multiple avenues of funding, which will be used for the 5-year strategy, would the company still consider investing in or purchasing companies outside of Azerbaijan?
As I mentioned, once again, our focus is on a strategy for growth plan. If something comes up, we definitely look into it. It's not that we're going to reject it. But at the time being, our main focus is our growth strategy plan. Do you want to add anything to this, Steve?
Yeah, sure. I mean, just lastly, I mean, obviously, as a company, we are globally aware. We know what markets we're interested in, and should the correct opportunity materialize, we would be investigating it. We're not simply blinkering ourselves to something that has the potential to grow the company further in the future. So as much as it's not necessarily an active part of our business right now, certainly we're aware of what potentials are out there. Okay, thank you. Okay, from what I can see, I believe that's the last of the questions. So thank you to everybody for supplying those questions to us, and I hope that myself and Reza have been able to answer satisfactorily the concerns and questions. So if I may, I'd like to hand over to Reza.
Stephen, Reza, if I may just jump back in there, thank you very much indeed for being so generous of your time there and addressing all of those questions that came in from investors this afternoon. Reza, if I may, just before really redirecting those on the call to provide you with their feedback, which I know is particularly important to yourself and the company, if I could please just ask you for a few closing comments to wrap up with, that'd be great.
Sure. In short, I can say, to summarize what you said, ANGLO Mining PLC is a great company, cash generative, multi-asset, great vision for the future, and access to credit facility in and out of Azerbaijan. So therefore, I'm sure that with the track record we have, we're going to achieve all the goals that we have already set forward for the company. At the moment also, I would like to thank you, the moderator, and all participants for joining us today. We appreciate your support in our journey to elevate Anglo-Asian mining to a multi-asset, mid-tier gold and copper producer. And also, we look forward to keeping you informed on our roadmap developments. Once again, thank you all for your time and for your attention.
Reza, Stephen, that's great. And thank you once again for updating investors this afternoon. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you'll now be automatically redirected for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This won't take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of Anglo-Asian Mining PLC, we would like to thank you for attending today's presentation. That now concludes today's session, so good afternoon to you all.
Thank you all and good afternoon.
Thank you very much. Thank you.